In a small, forgotten village, hidden deep in the woods, stood a lonely old house. The house was ancient, its walls covered with ivy, and its windows were dark and dusty. No one lived near it, and no one dared to go close. The villagers whispered stories about the house, saying it was haunted by a spirit. But they never knew the truth. The house was not just haunted, it was the home of a mother who had never stopped waiting. Many years ago, this house was full of life. A woman named Mrs. Evelyn Hart lived there with her son Daniel. Mrs. Hart was a kind and gentle woman. She loved her son more than anything in the world. Daniel was her only child, and she raised him with all the love a mother could give. They were poor, but they were happy. Their house was small, but it was warm and filled with laughter. Daniel was a bright and curious boy. He loved to explore the woods around their house and listen to the stories his mother told him at night. Mrs. Hart would tuck him into bed and tell him tales of brave knights, magical forests, and mysterious creatures. Daniel's eyes would light up with wonder, and he would drift off to sleep with a smile on his face. As Daniel grew older, his curiosity turned into a desire to see the world beyond the village. He dreamed of going to the city, finding a job, and making a better life for his mother. Mrs. Hart was proud of her son's dreams, but her heart was heavy with worry. The city was far away, and she had heard stories of how it could change people. But she did not want to hold her son back. She knew that one day he would leave to find his own path. That day came sooner than she expected. One crisp autumn morning, Daniel told his mother that he was leaving for the city. He was full of excitement and hope, ready to start a new chapter in his life. Mrs. Hart smiled and hid her tears. She packed his bags, gave him a warm embrace, and whispered, "Be safe, my son. Come back soon." Daniel promised he would return, and with a final wave he walked down the path that led to the city. Mrs. Hart watched him until he disappeared into the trees. She stood there for a long time, her heart aching, but she knew she had to let him go. She believed in him, and she knew he would come back. Days passed, and Mrs. Hart waited by the window every day, hoping to see her son coming home. She would prepare his favorite meals, just in case he returned hungry from his journey. She would sit in the rocking chair by the fire, knitting a scarf for him to wear when the winter cold arrived. But Daniel did not come back. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. The seasons changed, but Mrs. Hart's routine did not. She still waited by the window, still prepared meals, still knitted scarves. Her once joyful heart grew heavy with each passing day, but she never gave up hope. She believed that one day Daniel would walk through the door, and they would be together again. The villagers noticed Mrs. Hart's loneliness. They would sometimes visit her, bringing her food and offering kind words. But Mrs. Hart was always distant, her mind focused on her son. The villagers would often hear her talking to herself, as if she was having a conversation with someone who was not there. They would see her standing by the window, staring into the distance, waiting. As the years went by, Mrs. Hart grew older and frailer. Her hair turned white, and her steps became slow, but her love for Daniel never faded. It was as strong as it had been the day he left. She would often sit in her rocking chair, her eyes closed, and imagine what her son was doing. Was he successful? Was he happy? Did he think of her? She would smile at the thought of him coming home, opening the door and saying, "Mother, I'm back." But Daniel did not come back. The villagers began to worry about Mrs. Hart. They knew she was getting old, and they feared she would not be able to take care of herself. Some of them offered to bring her to their homes, but she refused. "I must stay here," she would say. "Daniel will come home. He needs to know where to find me." One stormy night, the wind howled through the village, and the rain fell in heavy sheets. The villagers huddled in their homes, but Mrs. Hart sat by her window, as usual, waiting. The storm did not frighten her. She had faced many storms before, but this night felt different. There was a strange stillness in the air, a silence that was louder than the storm. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Hart's heart leaped with hope. Could it be? Could it be Daniel finally coming home? She rushed to the door, her old legs moving faster than they had in years. She opened the door, but there was no one there. Only the cold wind and the rain greeted her. Disappointed, Mrs. Hart stepped back inside. But before she could close the door, she heard a voice. It was soft, almost a whisper, but it was unmistakable. "Mother," the voice said. "Mother, I'm here." Mrs. Hart's heart skipped a beat. She looked around, but she saw no one. "Daniel," she called out. "Is that you?" There was no answer, only the sound of the wind. But Mrs. Hart knew she had heard her son's voice. It was as clear as the day he had left. She walked back into the house, her heart pounding. She sat in her rocking chair, her mind racing. Had she imagined it? Was it just the wind playing tricks on her? But deep down she knew the truth. Her son had come home, but not in the way she had hoped. The next morning the storm had passed, but the village was eerily quiet. The villagers went about their day, but there was a strange feeling in the air. Some of them decided to check on Mrs. Hart, worried about how she had fared during the storm. When they arrived at her house, they found the door slightly open. They called out to her, but there was no answer. They stepped inside and found Mrs. Hart sitting in her rocking chair by the fire. She was peaceful, her hands resting on her lap, her eyes closed. But she was no longer breathing. Mrs. Hart had passed away during the night. The villagers were heartbroken. They had grown to care for the old woman, and they knew how much she had suffered waiting for her son. They decided to give her a proper burial and to remember her for the love she had for Daniel. As they prepared her body, they noticed something strange. In her hand, Mrs. Hart was holding a small old scarf. It was the scarf she had knitted for Daniel all those years ago. The villagers were puzzled. How had she gotten the scarf? They knew she had never seen her son again. As they laid her to rest, the villagers couldn't help but feel that Mrs. Hart had finally found peace. She was no longer alone, no longer waiting. They believed that in her final moments her son had come back to her, not in body but in spirit. And now they were together again, in a place where they could never be apart. But the story does not end there. After Mrs. Hart's burial, the villagers noticed something strange about her old house. At night, a soft, warm light would glow from the windows, even though no one lived there anymore. Some villagers said they could hear the faint sound of a woman singing, the same lullaby Mrs. Hart used to sing to Daniel. People began to avoid the house, afraid of what they might see or hear. But one day, a young boy, curious about the stories he had heard, decided to visit the house. He walked up to the door and knocked, but there was no answer. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was just as it had been left, with everything in its place. The boy walked through the rooms, feeling a strange sense of warmth and comfort. When he reached the living room, he saw the old rocking chair by the fire, and in the chair he thought he saw the faint outline of a woman, rocking gently back and forth. The boy froze, his heart pounding. But then, the figure spoke. "Don't be afraid, child," she said in a gentle voice. "I'm just waiting for my son. He will be home soon." The boy ran out of the house, terrified, and told the villagers what he had seen. They were shocked, but they were also comforted. They believed that Mrs. Hart's spirit had not left the house. She was still there, still waiting for her son, still holding on to the love that had kept her going all those years. The villagers decided to leave the house alone, to let Mrs. Hart wait in peace. They knew that one day she would be reunited with her son, and they would both find the happiness they deserved. And so, the old house remained, a silent witness to a mother's undying love, and a reminder that some bonds can never be broken. Years passed, and the village changed. New families moved in, and old ones moved away. But the story of Mrs. Hart and her son was never forgotten. It was passed down from generation to generation, a tale of love, loss, and the power of hope. One summer evening, many years later, a young man came to the village. He was tall and handsome, with dark hair and a kind face. He seemed lost, as if he was searching for something. The villagers watched him with curiosity as he walked through the streets, looking around as if he recognized the place. The man stopped at a small shop and asked the owner, "Excuse me, do you know where I can find an old house? It belonged to a woman named Mrs. Hart." The shopkeeper looked at the man in surprise. "Yes," he said slowly. "The house is still there, but no one lives in it now. Why do you ask?" The man hesitated for a moment, then said, "My name is Daniel Hart. Mrs. Hart was my mother. I left the village many years ago, and I haven't been back since. I felt I needed to come home." The shopkeeper stared at Daniel in shock. You're her son," he whispered. "But she waited for you for so long." Daniel nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I know," he said quietly. "I thought about her every day, but life in the city, it was hard. I wanted to come back, but something always kept me away. And now it's too late." The shopkeeper felt a pang of sadness for the man. "You should go to the house," he said gently. "Maybe you will find what you are looking for." Daniel thanked the shopkeeper and walked towards the old house. As he approached, he felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if the house was welcoming him back. He opened the door and stepped inside. The house was just as he remembered it. The old furniture, the worn rug, the smell of wood and herbs. It was as if time had stood still. Daniel walked through the rooms, memories flooding his mind. He could almost see his mother, standing by the stove, smiling at him as she cooked. Finally, he reached the living room. The old rocking chair was still there, and the fire was still burning softly in the hearth. Daniel's heart ached with longing and regret. He walked over to the chair and knelt down beside it. "Mother," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I should have come back sooner. I should have been here for you." As he spoke, the room grew warmer, and Daniel felt a gentle breeze brush his face. He looked up and saw the faint outline of his mother, sitting in the chair, her eyes filled with love. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice full of warmth, "you've come home." Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he reached out to her. "I have, Mother," he said, his voice breaking. "I have." The figure of Mrs. Hart smiled, and for a moment Daniel felt her touch warm and comforting, just as it had been when he was a child. He closed his eyes, savoring the feeling, and when he opened them, she was gone. But the warmth remained, and Daniel knew that his mother was finally at peace. He stayed in the house that night, sitting by the fire, feeling her presence around him. He knew that she was with him, that she had never truly left. The next morning, Daniel left the village, but he did not leave empty-handed. He carried with him the love of his mother, a love that had waited for him for so long. And as he walked away, he knew that she would always be with him, in his heart, guiding him wherever he went. The old house remained, a silent witness to the story of a mother and her son. The villagers still told the tale, and as they did, they were reminded of the power of love, the strength of hope, and the comfort that comes from knowing that even in the darkest of times, we are never truly alone. Love knows no boundaries, no time, no distance. It waits, it endures, and it never fades, even when we are far apart. Have you ever felt the enduring power of love, even when someone you care about is far away? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments.